tonight? So everyone? Okay, so welcome all everyone and Ramadan Kareem, Shahr Mubarak for you all who speak Arabic. Welcome in this banquet that we held in the EADP, Energy Access and Development Program. And I hope that you have such a nice evening and a nice dinner that will come inshallah in a few minutes. Before getting to the dinner directly, please allow us to have a few minutes to take you, or to embark all of us into a journey into a specific village in the Middle East. This particular journey that we are going to take, and don't worry, I'm not asking you to leave your receipts. We'll just go to use that. We are going to do this journey using our imagination. Just have that in your mind. A village, typical Middle Eastern village. In that village, we meet Sana. Sana, a typical housewife, mother of 4 children. Her day starts usually at 3:30 p.m. Sometimes 4, but definitely it all starts before the first sunlight. That's out of necessity, because she has to at least walk 1 to 2 hours, sometimes more actually, into the first water source in the area. She has to go there, she has to stay in a big line with the other women in the village. Sometimes they have to wait for 1 or 2 hours. Sometimes the whole process could take 5 to 6 hours just to get the water. If she came late, it's possible that she won't be able to take the water. And that means no water for the family for the next 2 or 3 days. This is a semi-daily routine, or sometimes daily routine in so many villages in the Middle East. Let's imagine, some of you might think already, why don't we just install a water pump there? It's a good option. But what about the social change that would bring? What about the people there? They already kind of accustomed to this tradition since long time. If we did that change, which kind of change? If we did that, if we implement this pump, which kind of change it would bring to Sana and her family? Is it possible that instead of having a friendly relationship with her neighbors, this relationship would be suddenly more aggressive and unfriendly? If we are talking about, even if putting that aside, who is maintaining this pump? Who is taking care of it? Who is running it? Who is distributing the water? We can't just go there and throw something out considering many options, many possibilities that could change. Even if with that, what about the diesel itself? If we're talking about a diesel pump, can we guarantee the affordability of diesel? Can we guarantee that the diesel, we won't have any diesel shortage, for example? Let the diesel alone. If we're talking about solar, can we guarantee that the solar wouldn't be affected, or the solar pump wouldn't be attacked by someone inside the village? Can we guarantee the security in the village itself? Besides that, these 6 hours that Sana is taking each day is not the only thing, or not the only task that she has to take. It's not the only task that she is obliged to do every day. She has also to take care of, for example, firewood for cooking. The water that she had there, she had sometimes to boil it. It could be contaminated. How to deal with that? Boiling that with firewood might be an option, but that could take also 2 to 3 hours to collect that. Because all of these hours are subtracted from the time that she could spend studying, the time that she could, herself, if she's a normal housewife, the children would also sometimes came with her to take the water. This is a lot of hours that is consumed from her life. Firewood, using firewood for cooking, for heating water. She exhaled the smokes, and this endangered her health. Well, how can we deal with that? Leave that firewood and the water alone. Even with the electricity itself, if you talk about very basic things like electricity, we could extend grid to the village itself. But we should also consider that. We should also consider, is it affordable? What kind of change would it bring to the village? Is it okay or is it sufficient to have just 1 or 2 hours of electricity each week? What kind of change that would make to Sana's life? If we went there also and threw just 15 watt solar cell equal system, is that also sufficient? Is that going to do any change? Or it will just bring Sana and her family the illusion of having access to electricity without changing anything? And we talk also about installing some big solution there, kind of, I don't know, microgrid or whatever. How could we, on the long run, be sure that after 20 years, this system would work and the people would use this system in a good way and not returning after 20 years, returning to the 0 points like before? All of these aspects, there's a lot of questions and a lot of approach and a lot of how you say, issues that we have to deal with in energy access and development in general. And that's what we almost each day face in the EADPs. But more on that, and much more on these issues, would be elaborated by Dawud. Dawud, the stage is yours.
Thank you so much for the brief introduction. Also from my side, thank you so much for joining us for this evening. This evening is actually a combination of multiple different occasions. And one of them is, of course, we're celebrating our work, we're celebrating the work we're doing, and we would love to celebrate this together with you. We're so happy to have you here tonight. And therefore, what I'm going to do tonight, so while my colleague Hashem is going to take care of all the preparations, I have the pleasure of entertaining you until we reach the time for dinner for iftar. So this is going to be approximately 9:15 p.m. Until then, I'm just going to give you a brief journey through some issues. Basically, I'm just trying to give you an impression of the different work that we're doing and the topics that we are concerned with. A lot of the work is, of course, focused on this very, very broad term called sustainable development. Sustainable development is a term that is interestingly much newer than people might think. So eventually it's a term that is only widespreadly used since 2015. And the term sustainable development is a term that doesn't come without caveats, that doesn't come without exceptions, that doesn't come without any kind of complications. And so again, just giving you some impressions. So basically, the most important rule that we see at EADP, and that generally holds true in any kind of development process, is context is key. So we as human beings, we tend to generalize. We tend to see things, we try to see patterns. Actually, that's what makes us strong as humans. However, in very different situations, finding patterns, finding generalities can be something very bad. And in the development process, this is eventually a time where finding too general things can be very bad. And at EADP, something that we emphasize is the idea that everything is unique. Every case that we handle is unique. Every village that we talk about is unique. Empirical studies have eventually shown in whichever direction you want to see, let it be the effects that different development programs can have, let it be the cultural effects they can have, let it be the question if they do have any effect at all, that all depends on the exact context. So one particular context, or one particularly element that we often see, for those who don't know, although the background isn't so technical, we're often surrounded by many engineers, and what we see often is, for instance, that let it be agencies or governments who fund any kinds of fund programs, let it also be engineers or researchers or practitioners who are invested in this field, they often come to a specific kind of mindset. And this mindset can often be, I have a specific technology, I have a specific way of thinking, and I would like to employ this, I would like to make it work wherever this is happening. This, however, is not reality. This is not how we should work, and this is not how we should work if we want to be effective in the work we do. Instead of that, what we need to do is we need to recognize, we need to start thinking based on the problem. We need to start thinking on the question, what do people need? What needs to be done? And that will eventually guide us to the right questions, be it like in this very precise case, be it in terms of technology, or otherwise, be it on a more general stance, be it the way how to perceive things, the way how to work with things. So eventually the term sustainable development itself is a term that compromises multiple different things. So we have the term economic development. Economic development itself stresses the idea of having growth and poverty eradication. So people have more things, they have more access to food, they have more access to water, they have more access to wealth. At the same time, the term sustainable development contains the term social development. This is a very important point that people sometimes forget, and would even postulate that eventually these things are to some extent are interconnected, may even be interdependent. So social development says that it's not enough to give people more things, it's not enough to give them more wealth. It is eventually very important to empower people, to make them more responsible for things that surround them, to give them more education, to give them access to a better way of life. And lastly, of course, we need to, whichever degree at least, think about environmental protection. Because whichever system we build, if the system is not sustainable, if we talk about a system that our children cannot enjoy anymore, then it's a system that we shouldn't consider and that has no need to be considered. So then the sustainable development is eventually the idea to have a look at these three things at the same time, and not on any level, at the local, at the national, at the regional, and lastly also at the global level. So this eventually led us, or not only that, but this was the consideration that led us to the Energy Access and Development Program. Saying just a few things about ourselves. So the Energy and Development Program started in its most initial form in the year 2015. Eventually we were born out of university, so we started our work at Berlin Institute of Technology here in Berlin. And then over time our work became more and more independent until we founded an own independent organization in 2018, being the Energy and Development Program, a non-profit, non-governmental organization that is taking care, that is concerned with sustainable development in the Middle East. Let me walk you through this simple illustration of what EADP eventually is. EADP consists out of two main pillars. The first pillar of EADP is technical assistance. So what we do at EADP is we are concerned with areas, particularly rural areas in the Middle East that lack sustainable development, that lack access to water, that lack access to water, electricity, food, similar things. And we work together with local partners, local NGOs, with other development agencies, with universities, to support these communities by design work. So for instance, we design microgrids, we design solutions for electrification. By training, so we train, we're going to talk more about that on the coming slides. We train people here in Berlin, we train people abroad, and we're concerned with projects of knowledge transfer. And lastly, executing projects. So offering project management to large-scale projects, offering the coordination of local implementations. This is one side. The second side of EADP is eventually EADP and think tank. Let us think about the idea of sustainable development not only being one thing. Sustainable development not only meaning people should have more water, not only meaning people should have more food or energy. Sustainable development being people need to have a holistic way of development. That includes social development, that includes environmental protection, that is holistic in a sense. So EADP at the same time works as a classical think tank, offering research on both technical issues and on non-technical issues, particularly on issues that are concerned with societal transformation and governance, particularly of course in the infrastructure areas, so governance of energy, governance of water, and governance of telecommunication. We offer advisory both to governments, to private actors, to communities, and to other development agencies who work in these fields. And we do a lot of networking. So of course, this event today is in one sense or another actually born out of the second pillar, in the sense that a large portion of our work is concerned with us networking with other partners in the field. It may be academic partners, partners from the public sector, partners from the private sector, and of course, lastly, beneficiaries themselves, so people who live in communities that do have a lack in terms of sustainable development. These two pillars are eventually standing on three central principles that we have. The first one of them is interdisciplinarity, and this is something that we just don't say that we believe. As you will see later, the members of EADP all have different backgrounds. We're not just all engineers, we're not just all lawyers. We are people from many different backgrounds that consist both our academic backgrounds, our professional backgrounds, and also to some extent our ethnic backgrounds. Therefore, as the two pillars already show you, interdisciplinarity is lived on many different stages. We are interdependent. We are not connected to any political movement. We are not connected to any side, which is of course particular when we talk about conflict-affected regions. So for instance, when we talk about Yemen, when we talk about Lebanon, which is an important point. We do not have an issue to work with anyone, because in the end, the work that we do has the sole purpose of benefiting people on the ground. So we don't care who is governing an area, we don't care who is around an area. In the end, we are concerned with turning things to a better stage and are independent of any kind of major movement. And lastly, we focus on innovation. It's closely linked to our large work in research. We are concerned with innovation in technology, but also with innovation in methods, innovation in social transformation, and innovation also just as a holistic word in terms of organization. The obvious question that people are going to ask, and people do ask, is eventually why another organization? There are many different organizations doing these things. There are people doing mini-grids. There are organizations finding some things. There are many organizations doing capacity building. There are guys working at universities. Why another organization? Well, of course, it's always hard to find one's own unique selling point, but we're very convenient with what EADP is, and we're very certain that the unique selling point that we have is eventually a very strong one. So in the end, what EADP is doing is work at the very, very intersection of things, which makes us prone for networking and prone for working with partners. We work on both technological issues and on economic issues. We work on the intersection between Europe and the Middle East. We work on the intersection between management-related things and execution-related things. We work on the intersection between theory and practice. That is what EADP is made of the idea of standing between different things and bridging between these things. We work region-specific. This is not because we say the Middle East necessarily deserves more attention than other areas, because we are from the area, and this is where we can use our large networks. We are, again, independent and innovative, and lastly, as already mentioned, we do have strong networks both in Europe and in the area, and these networks eventually are what we can use for our work. Let me introduce this very, very briefly to our team. So you have already gotten to know Hashem and me today. Our assistant director, Pascal Hart, unfortunately can't be with us today. Neither can be our senior fellows, Adnan, Asa, and Ahmed. Fortunately, Ahmad and Musa are with us today from the fellows. So this is the kind of permanent setup that EADP is made of. And at this very point, let me, of course, also use this opportunity to say thanks a lot to all of these people on the chart that make EADP possible, that contribute their work to EADP, to its working on issues. And lastly, of course, this thankfulness is not limited to the people who have pictures on the wall, because there's so many more people behind this. As I will explain to you, EADP is working very strongly, for instance, in academic teaching, in involving students in our work, in involving interns in our work, and numerous supporters in our work. And of course, these people may even deserve much more thankfulness than I do, or any of these people on these pictures do, because these are the people that often just bring us forward, that bring fresh thinking, that bring new innovative things into the program. As already mentioned, one of the strongest points we have at EADP is eventually us teaching and training. Since 2015, we do offer a course at Integrative Technology on these issues, which is a course which has both consists of a lecture where we teach students the scientific and the academic basics of energy in a development process, and at the same time we engage students in our practical work. Just from this single course we have more than 200 alumni, and these alumni aren't just people who took a course and say I'm happy about this, but eventually a significant portion of our students now eventually works in the field of energy and development. They either work at large companies and provide their knowledge for bringing investments into the right places. They work at development agencies, they work at government ministries, or they work in their respective non-European home countries, bring sustainable development forward. And that is something I'm personally very, very proud of, to have influenced the life of more than 200 students, of whom many eventually bring forward the mission that we have at EADP. We also have numerous international cooperations for teaching and training. So we cooperate with local partners, for instance, partners from other universities or also non-academic institutions. We bring them knowledge transfer and help educating the future generation of engineers and other practitioners. We co-supervise academic thesis and interns here in Berlin, which is, as you can imagine, a tremendous amount of work, but it's often actually worth it. And we also, of course, for future planning new projects and courses in this area. As mentioned, networking is a tremendous part of our work, and even the small banner of logos here is only a fraction of the people we could think about that we could have added to this picture. Again, mentioning it, so capacity building is, besides the networking in general, capacity building is also an integral part of our work. So we act as a facilitator also for local NGOs that have that lack sometimes capabilities, that lack knowledge, that sometimes lack funding, and we support them in enabling their work. And on the other hand, we are also working with other partners who support us in our work, be it, for instance, German ministries or be it also USAID. And of course, we're working with different partners who work with us side by side. So, for instance, the Yemen German Association for Engineers, or also our colleagues at different universities. Again, advisory and policy work is something that is different from what other people in development might do. And for us, it's an integral part of work. Because again, we understand that the process of development is a process that doesn't just happen in an engineering lab. It's eventually a process that is interconnected between both technology and the application of this technology, which is of course interdependent on a legal framework, which is interdependent on a governance framework. So what we do is, of course, we engage policymakers both here in Germany and in different Middle Eastern countries, or the representatives. We engage them in different processes. Sometimes we also advise for other development agencies. And of course, something that is very important to us, we have half a year ago started to do quarterly publications. So we quarterly publish academic work, but also we're publishing policy briefs that are directly targeted towards decision makers, depending on the issue, again, either in Germany or in different Middle Eastern countries, and that are advising how specific things, particularly again in the governance of energy, in the governance of water, in the governance of other infrastructure sectors, how these things can be better and how these things can eventually contribute to an overall more healthy, holistic environment. At this specific point, I'm going to give the mic back to Hashem, who is going to present some of the work. Would you?
Thank you, Dawud, and welcome back again. So, actually, when we introduce ourselves to local communities or new partners, they usually get to know us through energy access, and when they get the term development, energy access, and when they know that we are much more focused on the rural areas, they kind of associate us with the solar guys, which actually we're trying to avoid because we are much more broader and wider than that. But nonetheless, we haven't been very, I don't want to get the wrong idea. We have a very friendly relationship with the sun, especially the solar-based approach and solutions. We contributed highly for such research, for such designs, for such approach, for such solutions that solar or sun-based in the rural areas and in general. So one basic and important key factor here is researching solar cookers, for example. Solar cookers or cooking using the sun is not a new thing per se, but kind of adjusting it and customizing it to different locations based on their food they are consuming, based on the weather conditions there, based on so many factors. Such a technology, such approach, such design need to be researched and designed. In EADP, we have researched different materials, for example, upon the reflectiveness and upon different sizes, different types. How could we make them optimal for different locations? We had different designs, as you can see, some of them, for example, from rattan, some of them from MDF, which is wood-based material. And the common in them all is the affordability and the cheap solutions that they provide. It's not only that it's cheap, and it's not that it could help a lot of communities, rural communities, or communities in general, to reduce the consumption of gas or firewood. Of course, we know that you can't rely 100% on that, but it is really reducing the gas or the cement that a family could pay monthly, for example. And the best thing here is do-it-yourself solutions. So, with that, for example, one of the planned projects that we are having in the next few, that we are going to process right now, and I'm happy here to welcome Anwar, our local partner in Yemen. For example, we are trying to also go and reach to the most vulnerable in the society through training of multiples and teaching these people how to design or how to create these solar cookers themselves and then market it to the market, to the money market. This is, for example, one approach that we have. Another also potential would be in Senegal, that we try to also do this idea and to make the design of the solar cookers there. Besides solar cookers or staying with the sun, in Baladi we already achieved using the sun, our friend there in Lebanon. We installed with them, association with the Baladi Foundation, we installed several solar heaters in Mashmousha village in Lebanon, which were implemented, I think, 2 years ago. Another application, or another solution, another approach with the sun was but this time in the water, or what we are trying to, the planning, or the plant project that we are trying to do with Bondi Shams, NGO, a Pakistani NGO based in UK, London. They are the winner of Goldman Sachs 2008 Activist Impact Fund. We, in cooperation with them, are mapping several locations in Yemen in order to install their OSIS box, which pump and filter water to villages and to rural areas using solar energy. These are very selected examples of our work and efforts using solar energy in general. And there's of course further more, but I will leave that to Dawud to explain on and to elaborate.
Thank you. So again, of course, to mention it, the different projects that we do present at this point of time are, of course, also a small subset of the overall work we do to give you an overall impression of what we do. And one of these actually quite large projects that we are concerned with at EADP for numerous years now is the future of Yemen's energy sector. Please have a look at this image and consider an image of the capital Sana'a in 2012 and 2016. And it was bird battery, and we have a personal favorite, the moonwalk on the PV panels. And this is just to outline you that when we talk about Yemen, we talk about a very interesting opportunity, particularly from different angles. But also we look at an opportunity that is very close to being thrown away. Because what happens is the complete lack of skills, experience and standards in the solar industry. The solar industry basically means the entire value chain is driving people again away from this technology. into whatever else is happening. And as we know, the world of energy systems and environmental systems knows a thing which we call path dependency. So once you're on a path, it's very, very hard to leave it again. So therefore, we engage in numerous training and advisory activities with different partners, partially with the German Association of Yemeni Engineers, with the GIZ, and with different Yemeni higher education institutions that we collaborate with, to do capacity building in the Yemeni solar energy sector. Not here on the slide, but this even, of course, also extends to our work in policy advisory, where we give advice to to both international and national stakeholders on how eventually the Yemeni energy system can be put onto a better track. Something else we do again on the same issue, mentioning it again. People buy individual solar panels, but as you might know, this is definitely not any way how electricity should be generated in an efficient way. So therefore, one of EADP's core tasks is eventually the rural electrification via mini-grids. So mini-grids are eventually the idea that we have something that works very closely to a national electricity grid, but on a local level. So we're using decentralized technologies, but centralized. What we do particularly in there, we provide designs for different development agencies, and we support them in their work. We support, of course, also local communities, and most importantly, we bridge between these different parts of the work. Something which is more or less new is so-called swarm electrification. Let me give you an idea. So particularly in Yemen, when we consider the idea that different households do own their individual supply systems. So households own a solar panel, households own batteries, and households own their devices. This way of producing and consuming electricity is terribly inefficient, and it's eventually very expensive when you compute it down on the unit cost of electricity. And it's very inefficient. This system will not bring you far. It won't enable you to eventually become an independent, modern household in the way that probably you would like it to be. The swarm grid is eventually an idea which is not originally ours, which has been developed by the cooperation between a Berlin-based and a Bangladeshi organization, which is focusing on this eventual idea of what could we just do? So, given that people have these individual systems, let's just connect them together to a growing grid of electrification. What's the main point behind this? The main point behind this is that now neighbors can eventually trade electricity. Importantly, we are the first organization in the world to have considered the idea of such a swarm grid in AC current. So all previous attempts that have been done by different organizations or companies are up to now focused on direct current, and therefore the overall system in their size, in their sizes, have been tremendously limited. But let's face it, one day you want to use your blender, one day you want to use your electric water heater, one day you want to use your television. So we said, no, this is not a way how we can talk about houses in a sustainable way, at least not in a user-sustainable way. So therefore, we need to consider the idea of an AC swarm grid. And we were eventually the first organization to release a scientific study on this project, on the idea of, on the novel idea of an AC swarm grid that is hopefully in that project which we expect to happen in 2020. Eventually, we are now at the stage where we are constructing and designing the eventual electric controller that is going to work in such a swarm grid. To lastly, in 2020, implement it in a Yemeni modern community to finally prove that these results don't only hold true on paper, but eventually that this simple way of changing the way of people, how they use and produce electricity, that it's going to change, particularly Yemen, for better. In a very brief nutshell, we also have a second kind of, a second large field of analysis, which is more directed towards a policy side, which is questioning how eventually can we see what are different ways how the Yemeni energy sector can develop, which is a question of tremendous importance, A, of course, people living inside Yemen, B, for analysts, and C, of course, for people in governance. So we have asked the questions, which future Yemens do exist? So starting from today, given that different factors happen in different ways, what's the future that we can foresee for Yemenis, not only energy sector, but infrastructure in general? How do drivers that we see today, and most important, people can influence, how do these factors today create path dependency and lead Yemen to a situation which is either for the better or the worse? And lastly, of course, which role can and should different actors, again, being both national actors inside Yemen and being international actors, take to lead Yemen to sustainable development? So in the course of this project, which is still ongoing, we have eventually used structured analytic techniques, which is a very large set of different methods that are used particularly, not only, but particularly by the intelligence community, in order to generate ideas about things that we haven't dared to think about yet. Also, fortunately, seeing some familiar faces today. So, a major milestone in this research was a scenario development workshop, which for this one we collaborated again with German Institute for Economic Research. We gathered approximately 30 experts from different fields, from different backgrounds, but all of them in their own way being experts on Yemen in March 2019 in a whole day workshop. And then we've used this set of neurologically founded methods to let these experts think about Yemen and about infrastructure in Yemen in a novel way. The eventual final report and of course also policy brief on this issue is going to be released in August 2019, but we already have drafts for 4 scenarios which represent 4 extreme ways how Yemen and its surrounding area can develop. And these scenarios, again, they will provide tremendously important input for policymakers, for analysts, and for investors on how to deal with Yemen and how to put Yemen on a trajectory that is eventually desirable. Getting closer to Iftar, we're coming to another project, which is Greening Africa Together. It's a project where we have collaborated with numerous NGOs. But I'm definitely not going to say something on that because we have the true expert today. So we have Lily Zeiler with us, who is the international coordinator of Greening Africa Together, and is going to give us just a very brief idea on the project.
Yes, in fact, Greening Africa Together is not a project, it's a network. But we are doing a lot of projects, and some of them together with EADP, and we are very happy about this cooperation, and we are happy to be here this evening to share with you some very short information. So it's very, very short because I know we are not far from Iftar, and when we began in Senegal 9 years ago to work on the first steps of this network, it was in the month of Ramadan, and everyone was working the whole day, and in the evening we were so happy to sit together for the Ndogu, it's called in Senegal, and we are not all Muslims, but it's one part of this network that it's very interreligious and very intercultural. So you see we have a lot of partners, some of them like EADP associations, but we have also a lot of universities. Well, I think the slides I sent, they were so full that some were taken out, but we have universities from Senegal, state universities, we have universities from Benin, we have universities from DRC. In fact, it's a little bit like EADP is for Middle East, we are for Africa, but I'm like the little part of the iceberg which is not representative for the rest because it's an African network and not a diaspora network. There are some people, and when I joined, I was also in Senegal. So we see that we have in our network some important points. One of these important points is to serve and to learn, because it's education and it's development. So possibly we explain it better on the next slide. Okay, thank you. So, very small now. So students can apply their knowledge in our projects But in fact, the projects are not done by the universities. It's the associations. They, together with the communities, they find out the actual needs of the communities, and the students are looking for solutions. In this way, the communities get the solution for a problem. For example, we don't have light in the maternity. For example, we have Aslan here. He came to Benin with us, and to find the solution for the maternity. In a small village, they had no light, so the students from Benin, that's the most important group, but from Congo, from Senegal, and from Berlin, they were preparing together for 6 months a solution, and then they all come together in so-called summer schools, but it's a school of life and implementation, to live really in these places in a very simple way, and to realize the project, and then to report and to present and exchange the best practices. So the most important is not to enable the students from Berlin. Also, it's very important because we share and exchange and we are all together, but to enable the African students to be local experts. For example, this year we had a group, they have to prepare solar dryer, and the group is working on automatization. The student from Berlin, she said, "Oh, can you tell me the students from Berlin who went there? I want to ask them some things about automatization." I said, "No, the specialist is from Congo and from DRC." So they were working on Skype for the solution for Senegal. So it's important to not to look always for the specialists and the experts in Europe. They are everywhere, but we can exchange and help each other. So we see a little bit our network. It's nearly all of Africa if we go from east to west, and we are working on different activities. We have different colors also, because we have some projects supported by the German Academic Exchange Service and the Ministry of Cooperation, but we have also local projects which are just linked for the moment by exchange. So we can have some pictures to end with our presentation to see some different activities. We have to fight climate change activities on reforestation, on renewable energy, on education, environmental education, for example, for school children, teachers, people in hospitals, and we are working also on waste management. Here we see only some examples on reforestation in Senegal. This is like 5 years ago. Then we have the hospital in DRC, where they are doing a solar system for lighting in the hospital. And this is the beginning of a biogas digester in Senegal and a solar dryer for mangoes. So I think this is coming to a good appetite, and we hope to invite all of you for our next presentations. For example, on the Lange Nacht der Wissenschaft, the long night of sciences, we will have some presentations and a booth in the TU Berlin.
Thank you so much for introducing Bringing Africa Together to us. And in the remaining 7.5 minutes towards the task, I'm going to present to you a last example for our project, and it's a project that I'm also very proud to present today. Let me introduce to you Concepts Academy. So Concepts Academy is a groundbreaking online academy that has the aim of fast-tracking people either without any skills in previous skills in IT, or people with a typical university certificate, fast-tracking them eventually to a career in programming. It's Cyprus, so it's a startup based in North Cyprus, and it's a project that isn't just initiated by anyone, but eventually it's a project that is initiated by literally the world's best Arab coding tutors. It's by Mohammed Al-Hakim and Yasser Al-Najjar, who are both two Cyprus-based software developers and that have initiated Concepts. I'm not going to talk so much more about Concepts because Concepts eventually can talk for its own, although only in Arabic, unfortunately.
ذكر الجامعة بس ما نفعلش هذا الجامعية أن يطرح اقتصاد
Strong points about concepts. Eventually, concepts is one of the first programs that is entirely in Arabic, and concepts is designed in a fashion that is a highly applied focus. So concepts has the idea of teaching people exactly what they do need to know to find employment in that sector, or even to become independent software developers. It is suitable, of course, people with a university degree, but as we have seen, it's also suitable for absolute beginners. And it has most importantly, from our point of view, it has asynchronous learning. So concepts eventually has a set of own tutors that help students learn, that correct their work, that help them. However, this is asynchronous, meaning that people can work from home even if they don't have an internet connection. Think about Yemen. Think about what happens if the internet just drops off. Think about you're in a plane, okay? Still, students from concepts can work on concepts, later submit their work, have tutors from concepts, correct that work, give them feedback on the work, and having it returned to them later. Concepts has different tracks. So there is a track for back-end development and a track for front-end development. And planned concept is going to have in different countries program certification. So we as EADP see enormous potential for unemployed youth in the Middle East by initiatives, of course, not only by concepts, but for instance by concepts, and therefore we are currently planning, we expected this to happen in winter 2019, and so we have a project together with Concepts Academy on capacity building. So that means particularly we are going to help concepts spreading their word, spreading information about this awesome academy, and making it and bringing it to work. So A, we're going to offer organizational development, and B, we are helping concepts to organize a series of Yemen-bound workshops to A, raise awareness for IT education in general, and for the numerous benefits that studying IT can bring to people. And C, the aim of this workshop is to equip 50 individuals with skills that are going to be necessary and sufficient for getting employment in the local IT sector. So helping these people at the same time helping also the local economy. At this point in time, it's actually the very, very last minute. Let me use the last minute to, of course, emphasize one of the main points why we are here today, also why we are organizing this today. Because we are inviting you, we are inviting every one of you to become part of the mission that EADP has. And as you might imagine, of course, the work that we do is work that is for free. So it's work that requires an enormous amount of resources, both for overhead and for the project that we eventually develop and implement. And so we invite you and kindly ask you to become part of this movement and to support EADP, of course, most importantly for us, with financial contributions that can happen either in cash, that can happen in check, that can happen as in-kind donations. You're, of course, also able to donate to EADP via PayPal, either as a monthly or as a one-time contribution. You find the link, the QR code on the flyers that you have on your tables. And lastly, of course, also via a bank transfer. Please have in mind that all donations that you do to EADP are completely tax deductible. And lastly, so if you decide to donate anything, we'll be very happy to give you a certificate which you can later submit to the Ministry of Finance to deduct it from your income. And of course, if you're interested in supporting EADP in any other way, just let us know. Okay, so this was just one more thing. So on the tables, in case you do wish to donate anything today, on the tables you find envelopes. So you are completely free to contribute any donation which you have inside the envelopes and just give them to us in private if this is what you prefer. If you wish to give it, if you wish to contribute any donations directly, just come to either to Hashem or come to me, or again, use any of the other ways, use PayPal or use KT Bank, if you want to become part of this, which we are certain of, very important mission that we have. With these final words, again, thank you so much for being here today. I hope it wasn't too boring to bore you 1 hour, one entire hour before the iftar with this. I think, yeah, okay, so perfect. Break your fast.